Hey everyone, what's going on? So the reason I wanted to make this video was actually because a developer at DICE told us a few weeks ago that the single player guys at the studio are looking into an instant action mode. This was later confirmed by another DICE developer who tweeted a few days ago that while they are investigating, it's not guaranteed that we'll ever see it get implemented. But before I go any further, let me explain what instant action is for those who might not be familiar with the previous Battlefront games. Instant action was a game type that let you hop into matches offline with bots, where you could customize stuff like the game mode, the amount of AI, and whether heroes could be turned on or off. So you basically got to play the multiplayer modes in single player, but with this added layer of customization. This is at the top of the list of things that fans want to see get added, myself included, and I think it's currently the most popular thread on the Star Wars Battlefront forums. If the leak from EA Brazil is to be believed, the free DLC coming at the end of this month will include private matches, and bots are usually a common feature of them, but according to the devs they won't be coming anytime soon. The private matches themselves will instead be there to allow gamers to organise custom tournaments. I can get over the lack of galactic conquest, but it's actually a bit shocking to me that we don't at least have an instant action mode for Star Wars Battlefront. It is arguably the most core aspect of what Star Wars Battlefront is, and I spent much of my time on the original two games just playing this mode. If you haven't played them before, you're probably thinking about how lame the idea sounds, and I wouldn't blame you based on the single player modes that are already in the latest Battlefront games, and the fact that it's generally not interesting when done in other games. But it was just so much fun playing around with all the weapons, heroes, vehicles, and maps from the Star Wars universe. It was also quite a challenge on higher difficulty settings. On Elite difficulty I was losing almost as much as I was winning, and even on hard it was engaging enough to keep me on my toes. I don't really understand why they put time into uninspired single player modes like survival and the battle missions when I'm sure most fans would have wanted them to prioritise an instant action mode. There are games out there that have done wave based modes much better, like Call of Duty Zombies for instance, and the battle missions themselves just felt like another survival mode in disguise. The difficulty increased the longer the match went on, especially in the latter half with tougher enemies spawning in, except this time you were collecting orbs from the bodies of the enemies that you or your AI friends killed. Instead of putting in these modes that have been done much better in other games, they could have focused on what made the Battlefront series so special in the first place. Another reason I want to see an instant action mode is because not everyone wants to play competitively all the time. No matter what skill level you're at, sometimes you just want to relax and have fun blasting away at stormtroopers or rebel scum without having to worry about getting shot in the face every 2 seconds. This especially applies to those who don't usually dabble in competitive multiplayer, and they make up quite a large percentage of the Star Wars fanbase. Online experiences can also sometimes be very frustrating. Balancing issues are a much bigger deal when playing against real people, and those who are at lower levels may feel very underpowered against others who are at say level 40. Another problem that I've noticed in Battlefront is that people tend to leave a match as soon as it's over, which often results in an empty lobby for the next match. Furthermore, when you factor in the lack of decent offline options, it would render the game virtually unplayable if you're having internet problems or if the servers were to go down. I think that if there was at least an engaging instant action mode, it would have eliminated the need to make the online multiplayer more casual in order for the game to appeal to more people. And by making it more casual, I mean having things like power-ups to pick up on the map and the lack of customization options. The lack of depth was probably one of the main reasons why interest in it dropped soon after release. It wasn't the deep experience that players expected from the developers of Battlefield. Even an EA executive admitted that they intentionally designed this iteration of Battlefront to be accessible and that it may not have the depth that the hardcore audience wanted. However, in the end I feel like we ended up with a game that nobody wanted. I know it sounds like I might be stretching it now, but for me it all goes back to the lack of instant action. You can't really make online multiplayer accessible to people who don't at least casually play games like Call of Duty, so those that wanted depth got the shaft because of this attempt. And those who aren't into playing online with others don't have any good single player options to turn to with the lack of an instant action mode. Plus they could use this mode to get more familiar with the way the game works, or to practice if they want to get better. Now one of the DICE devs did say that offline multiplayer would have technical difficulties, and I can understand why. The AI in the game aren't programmed to do anything outside of combat, so you'd have to program them to be challenging enough for objective based modes. This would especially be tough for walker assaults, where the AI would have to do more than just capture control points. It definitely needs quite a bit of work, but the bots in the previous Battlefront games were never perfect, and I'm not asking for them to be perfect now. the AI in survival mode and the battle missions can actually be pretty tough for those who want to be challenged, especially when you play on Master difficulty. So far, I think the only single player mode I actually managed to beat on Master by myself was Hero Battles, and this is with the enemies having less health than the players that you encounter online. So the challenge is definitely there for those who want it like it was in the previous games. If they gave them as much health as normal players online and threw in the different enemy types that you encounter in the single player modes, this would definitely help spice things up. There were stormtroopers with invisibility, jetpacks and shields, as well as shock troopers. This would be great to play around with in the multiplayer modes, and it would add a nice twist. These could be given to the rebels too if you decide to play as the Empire, and instead of shock troopers you could perhaps have royal bodyguards. Maybe they could make it more classic by taking away the regenerating health so that you can only be healed if you're near a healing droid or if you pick up a health pack. However, this might be tampering with the core gameplay system a bit too much. AT-ST AI definitely needs to be tweaked as it's too easy to take down and it isn't aggressive enough. On the other hand, the AI for ships is already done in Fighter Squadron, so at least they have that covered already. I'd love to see some customization too, like being able to choose how many bots you want on each side, the maps involved in the rotation, and whether hero power-ups can spawn. There should also be an option to play split screen co-op and online co-op with a friend, so you can play instant action against the AI together like you can in survival mode. And of course, it has to have a separate leveling system so that people don't abuse it to level up quicker than they normally would for the online portion. I think it would even potentially help boost the sales of the DLC if the new maps, weapons and heroes could be played with offline. EA are definitely very aware of the lack of meat on the bones, and the addition of an instant action mode would certainly help to alleviate this, especially when there will be no Clone Wars added in the DLC. For all of the shit that people like to give to the prequels, the Clone Wars lent so much to the previous Battlefront games in terms of map variety, vehicles, heroes and villains, as well as the general overall customization. You had maps like Kamino, Mustafar, Geonosis, and even the asteroid-based Polis Massa where Padme gave birth to Luke and Leia. And because of the huge amount of heroes and villains that you could choose from, the Heroes vs Villains mode was literally just that. Heroes against villains. I have always dreamt of a Battlefront game that involved two seamless layers in the maps. The first layer would be normal ground combat, where you also have the option to get into a ship and fly up into the second layer for space battles. This would certainly work in a Death Star assault mode, where the rebels have to capture uplinks to take down the shields of the Death Star in order for the others in space to blow it up. It would also feature the Clone Wars, and I would actually prefer them to prioritise that over putting in content from Episode 7, even though that might not necessarily be a popular opinion. However, I do think that content from all of the films that we've had so far needs to be included. Hopefully we'll also get a Galactic Conquest mode, as I think they have an imperative on them to deliver on it for the sequel, as well as ground vehicle combat because this also used to be another important feature. And please, no more power-ups for getting in vehicles, it really ruins the immersion. Fingers crossed that we get all these things for Battlefront 2 next year. All I'm asking for right now though is an instant action mode, as I think it's too late to have something akin to Galactic Conquest. I'm not really fussed about having a single player campaign either, because that wasn't really the focus of the original Battlefront games. The PSP version had the campaign missions cut and I still had a blast with it. Let me know in the comments below whether you agree with me or not. Is an instant action mode also important to you, or do you think that it sounds lame and that we are all blinded by nostalgia? If you enjoyed this video, please share it so it has a chance to be seen by the developers over at DICE. Thanks for watching.